A man walks into a courtroom, hands shackled, his future hanging in the balance. The verdict is read. The sentence is given. The doors to his life as a free man close. But outside those doors, someone's watching. Not just the guards, not just the judge, but the corporations, the investors, the lobbyists. Because his incarceration isn't just punishment, it's profit. In the world of private prisons, a single inmate isn't just a case file, he's a financial asset, a guaranteed source of revenue, a body to fill a bed that must never stay empty. And the deeper you look, the more you realize this isn't about justice, this is about business, a multi-billion-dollar empire built on human captivity. But how did we get here? Who really profits? And why does the system always seem to expand, never contract? This is the story of how incarceration became one of America's most profitable industries, and why, no matter what happens, the system is designed to keep growing. Welcome to Empire Secrets. In the beginning, prisons weren't designed to be profitable. They were simply a function of the state, places meant to house those who had broken the law. The idea was straightforward: remove dangerous individuals from society, rehabilitate them when possible, and ultimately release them back into the world. But something changed. Prisons stopped being just a government institution and started becoming something else entirely: a business. It wasn't crime that led to this shift, it was opportunity. For most of modern history, the prison system operates at a loss. The government absorbed the cost of incarceration as a necessary public service, much like fire departments or public schools. But then came the 1980s, and with it a historic rise in incarceration rates. America's war on drugs, fueled by political rhetoric and tough on-crime policies, led to the largest prison expansion in US history. Suddenly, the number of inmates wasn't just growing, it was exploding. The government found itself facing a crisis: too many prisoners, not enough cells, and skyrocketing costs to keep them locked up. That's when the private sector stepped in with a solution. Corporate executives and investors saw an untapped market. The logic was simple: if the government couldn't afford to keep up with prison demand, why not outsource incarceration to private companies? They promised efficiency, lower costs, and better management. The state would pay a fixed fee per prisoner, and in return, private corporations would handle the logistics, building the prisons, staffing them, running them. And so in 1984, the Corrections Corporation of America, now known as CoreCivic, was born, the first ever private, for-profit prison company in the United States. Soon after, competitors like GEO Group entered the market. By the 1990s, the business of private prisons had exploded. But something happened that nobody was paying attention to at the time. The incentive behind incarceration shifted. When a prison's run by the government, fewer inmates mean lower costs for taxpayers. But in a for-profit model, every empty bed is lost revenue. This wasn't just about security or justice anymore. This was about maximizing occupancy rates. And that's exactly what happened. Lobbyists for private prison corporations began pushing for tougher laws that ensured more people would be incarcerated, and for longer periods. Mandatory minimum sentences, 3-strike laws, harsher drug policies, all of it contributed to a system that wasn't designed to reduce crime, but to keep prisons full. Between 1980 and today, the US prison population's grown by over 500%. Not because crime has risen at the same rate, but because the business model of incarceration requires constant expansion. For the private sector, prison wasn't just about punishment anymore, it was a financial asset. And once Wall Street got involved, the industry would never be the same again. Most Americans assume prisons are run by the government. In reality, a massive portion of the system has been privatized. Today, companies like CoreCivic and GEO Group control over 100,000 inmates across the United States. But they aren't just managing prisons, they own them. And here's the crucial difference. These corporations are publicly traded on the stock market. That means their goal isn't just to run prisons efficiently, their goal is growth: more inmates, more facilities, more revenue. Like any business, these companies must answer to their shareholders, and shareholders demand profitability. The problem? The only way for private prison companies to grow is by increasing incarceration rates. So how do they ensure that happens? By influencing the laws themselves. Private prison corporations spend millions of dollars lobbying politicians. They donate to campaigns, fund political action committees, and in some cases help write legislation that benefits their business model. In states like Arizona, private prison lobbyists pushed for tougher immigration laws, ensuring a steady flow of detainees into their facilities. In Louisiana, they supported longer sentencing laws, keeping inmates locked up for extended periods. And some contracts go even further. In many cases, private prison agreements include occupancy guarantees, clauses that require the state to keep prisons at a minimum capacity or face financial penalties. This means that even if crime rate drops, taxpayers must pay for empty prison beds. It's a system where corporations, not crime rates, dictate incarceration policies. But the real money, it isn't just in the prisons themselves, it's in everything that happens inside them. A prison cell isn't just a space to hold an inmate, it's a revenue stream. Every person inside the system generates income, and over the decades, the industry has found countless ways to monetize incarceration. Every interaction, every necessity, every service inside prison walls comes with a price tag, one that ensures the financial machine behind incarceration never stops turning. Prisoners wake up every day and go to work, not for fair wages, not for career-building opportunities, but for pennies on the dollar. Some inmates earn as little as 10 cents an hour, performing labor that benefits both government contracts and private corporations. They manufacture furniture used in state offices, sew uniforms for military personnel, and even package products for commercial businesses. Some answer phones in call centers, providing customer service to unsuspecting consumers who have no idea that the voice on the other end belongs to an inmate. Others are sent to fight wildfires in California, placed on the front lines of danger, risking their lives for wages lower than the cost of a single bottle of water. Prison labor is a $2 billion industry, yet the wages prisoners receive are so low that they can't even afford necessities from their own commissaries without financial support from family members. And the system's designed to ensure that every dollar sent in from the outside is also taxed. The cost of communication is another hidden financial burden. A simple 15-minute phone call, something that would be free or cost pennies in the real world, can cost as much as $25 inside prison walls. Phone services are controlled by private corporations, which charge exorbitant fees to inmates and their families. Companies like Securus Technologies and Global Tellink dominate this industry, profiting from a system where staying connected to loved ones becomes a luxury rather than a right. And then there's the prison commissary, the only store inmates have access to, where they can purchase basic necessities like toothpaste, soap, and snacks. The prices? Inflated beyond belief. A pack of ramen noodles that costs 25 cents at a grocery store sells for $1 or more in prison. A simple stick of deodorant, which might cost $3 in the outside world, can be double or even triple the price in prison. There are no alternatives, no competitors, no choices. Inmates either pay the price or go without. Even sending money to an inmate comes with fees. If a family wants to send their incarcerated loved one $100, services like J-Pay and Access Corrections can take as much as $30 in processing fees before the inmate ever sees a dime. It's a system where every transaction, every dollar exchanged, benefits from corporations that manage these services. The more inmates there are, the more money the system extracts. And yet, even after prisoners serve their time, the financial drain doesn't end. Because for the private prison industry, the business model isn't just about keeping people inside. It's about finding new ways to keep them in the system, even after release. Many former inmates face parole fees, monitoring charges, and mandatory programs that they are required to pay for out of pocket. Some are placed on electronic monitoring systems where they must pay daily or monthly fees just to wear the ankle monitor that tracks their movements. Others are required to attend privatized rehabilitation or re-entry programs, each one carrying its own cost, ensuring that even when a person leaves prison, the financial obligations continue. The system is structured so that incarceration isn't just a sentence. It's a business model that doesn't stop generating revenue, even when the bars open. For private corporations invested in this industry, the cycle of profit is designed to continue, making sure that every step of an inmate's journey, before, during, and after prison, remains a financial opportunity for someone else. For most people, the idea of prison is simple. Break the law, go to jail. It's seen as a function of justice, a necessary system that ensures safety and order. But when justice and profit become intertwined, the lines begin to blur. The system's no longer just about punishment, it's about financial incentives, political alliances, and guaranteed revenue. The deeper you look, the more it becomes clear that incarceration has transformed into something far more complex than a tool for maintaining law and order. It's become an industry, a business, where inmates are not just individuals serving time, but financial assets, generating revenue for those who hold the keys to their cells. The cost of running prisons is enormous. For decades, state and federal governments have struggled to balance their budgets while covering the rising expenses of incarceration. Housing, feeding, and securing inmates requires billions of dollars in taxpayer funding each year. By the 1980s, the prison population was expanding at an unprecedented rate, filling cells faster than new facilities could be built. The war on drugs and the introduction of strict sentencing laws had overwhelmed the system. Governments found themselves unable to keep up, and as they searched for solutions, an opportunity emerged, one that would change incarceration forever. If prisons were too costly to maintain, why not outsource the job to private companies? It was a simple idea, one that promised efficiency, cost reductions, and better management. The government would pay a fixed amount per prisoner, and in return, private corporations would handle the logistics, building, staffing, and running the facilities. It sounded like the perfect solution, but few anticipated the consequences of turning a government function into a business model. When prisons became for-profit enterprises, the goal is no longer to reduce crime. The goal is to ensure a constant supply of inmates. As the demand for more prison space increased, private companies stepped in to fill the gap. CoreCivic, formerly known as the Corrections Corporation of America, became the first for-profit prison company in the United States. GEO Group followed shortly after. These corporations didn't just operate prisons, they owned them. They were no longer just service providers for the government. They were in control of a system where every occupied bed equaled revenue, and an empty bed was a financial liability. The incentive had shifted from rehabilitation and justice to maintaining the highest possible incarceration rates. Success in the private prison industry wasn't just about efficient management, it was about securing long-term agreements that guaranteed revenue streams, regardless of crime rates. And to ensure those contracts kept coming, political influence became a necessary tool. Lobbying efforts increased, and private prison corporations became some of the biggest political donors in the country. They poured millions into campaign contributions and policy influence, supporting laws that would keep their facilities full. Tougher sentencing laws became their biggest ally. 3-strike rules, mandatory minimum sentences, and stricter drug policies all played a role in ensuring that more people were incarcerated for longer periods of time. In many cases, the contracts between private prisons and state governments even included occupancy guarantees, requiring prisons to be kept at 80 to 100% capacity. If crime rates dropped, the government would still be financially responsible for filling those beds. This meant that even in times of declining crime, incarceration remained high, not because of public safety concerns, but because the system had been financially structured that way. By the early 2000s, private prisons had become deeply embedded in the American justice system. The government wasn't just using them, it had become reliant on them. The sheer scale of outsourcing prison management had reached a point where reversing the trend would be financially devastating. Some towns were built entirely around prison economies, with local businesses, jobs, and community infrastructure depending on their continued operation. In some cases, state pension funds were even invested in private prison stocks, creating an additional layer of financial entanglement. Even when public pressure mounted against private prisons, the companies didn't fade away. They adapted. As certain states began phasing out private prison contracts, corporations pivoted to new revenue streams. Immigration detention centers became one of the fastest-growing segments of the industry. As the demand for housing undocumented individuals increased, These facilities operated under similar contractual structures as private prisons, with guaranteed occupancy rates ensuring a steady flow of funding. Electronic monitoring and probation services also became part of the evolving business model. Even as reforms sought to reduce incarceration rates, private companies positioned themselves to profit from alternatives to traditional imprisonment. Ankle monitors, home detention programs, and private parole services became new revenue generators, ensuring that individuals remained within the system, even if they weren't physically behind bars. One of the least discussed, yet most profitable, areas of privatized incarceration is the prison healthcare sector. Companies like WellPath and Horizon Health hold contracts to provide medical services inside correctional facilities. In an environment where cost-cutting is a priority, healthcare services often operate with minimal oversight, maximizing profits. The influence of private prison corporations extends far beyond the walls of their facilities. Their financial power allows them to shape legislation, control the narrative around incarceration, and ensure that reform efforts do not disrupt their business model. As long as they continue to fund political campaigns, support think tanks, and influence policy discussions, there will be little incentive for lawmakers to dismantle the system. For many, the biggest question remains why all of this is allowed to continue. The answer lies in the long-term financial entanglement. The system has become so dependent on private prison contracts that breaking free would require billions in new public spending, something few states are willing or able to afford. The expansion of private prisons is not failure of the justice system. It's a well-designed business model. It ensures that prison populations remain stable, government contracts continue flowing, and the cycle of incarceration never truly ends. The private prison industry was never about reducing crime. It was about turning incarceration into a financial asset. And today, that asset is so deeply intertwined with government funding, economic structures, and political influence that it cannot simply be undone. Even if crime rates fall, even if public opinion shifts, the business of incarceration will continue to evolve. It will adapt, pivot, and find new ways to sustain itself, because the partnership between private prisons and the government is not a temporary arrangement. It's a permanent fixture in the economy, one built on guaranteed growth, strategic influence, and an industry that profits not from crime itself, but from the legal framework that keeps the system alive. The business of incarceration is about sustainability, and in this industry, growth is not an option. It's a necessity. The courtroom is empty now. The verdict's been read, the sentence has been carried out. The prison gates have closed. Somewhere, another person enters the system. Another bed is filled, another contract is fulfilled. And behind it all, the machine keeps running. The bars, the cells, the guards. Those are just the surface. The real prison isn't the walls, it's the economy that thrives beyond them. It's the contracts that demand full occupancy, in the corporations that see incarceration as an industry where revenue is linked to occupancy rates, in the laws shaped for financial stability. For years, people have believed the justice system exists to protect, to rehabilitate, to deter crime. But what if crime rates dropped tomorrow? What if there were fewer arrests, fewer convictions, fewer people to imprison? The answer's simple. The industry would find a way to survive. It would adapt, expand into new markets, shift its focus. And so, the question is not whether private prisons will continue to exist. The question is, what comes next? In this system, the financial incentives behind incarceration ensure that the industry continues to evolve. The question isn't whether it will change, but rather how it will adapt. Your desire, your empire.